everyone, welcome to day one of the Sunflower Seams Goldenrod Sew Along. Today we will be focusing on cutting out our pattern pieces and fabrics. First things first, you need to decide which options you will be sewing for this sew along. Goldenrod has two different bodices. You can either do the simple bodice or the pleated bodice. There is also the short or long sleeves, the optional back tie, and the tiered and simple skirts. Both skirts come in either vintage or dress length. Once you have decided which options you will be sewing, it is then time to gather supplies. Besides the usual thread and scissors, if you are creating the pleated bodice, you will also want to get knit interfacing. The interfacing just helps stabilize your bodice so that whenever you do your pleats, it's much easier for them to keep their shape and for you to sew them. The interfacing that I have is the Pelon EK 130 Easy Knit, and I've used it multiple times and it works perfectly, and it's lightweight so your model doesn't feel it at all as they're wearing it. There's also the option to add buttons down the center of your bodice. These are just for looks and decoration, so you don't have to worry about buttonholes or anything like that. On page 6, you can also find a list of fabrics that'll work best for Goldenrod. Pages 7 and 8 in your tutorial break down how much fabric you will need for each option. Pages 9 and 10 walk you through how to best measure your model to make sure that the garment fits. It is very imperative that you measure your model frequently. As we all know, kids like to grow overnight, and so it's really important to take new measurements so that you don't create a garment that will no longer fit your model. Once you have those measurements, go to page 11 and use them to figure out what sizes you need to make. It is very common for children to be in different sizes, like a 2 chest and then an 18 to 24 month waist, but then a 3T height. Totally normal. So you'll find on page 12 the best way to grade your pieces so that your garment fits the child perfectly. Goldenrod does have a positive ease. Most of the time knits are meant to kind of hug the chest and the waist. Goldenrod, however, is meant to be looser and more flowy. So grading to the waist isn't as imperative in this pattern as it is in other knit patterns. On page 13, you will find a list of tips for sewing with knits. All of the tips on this page are very helpful and beneficial. The 3 I would like to point out in this video is that you will always want to use either a ballpoint or universal needle. You also want to make sure that you do not stretch your fabric as you are sewing it. And it is best to add clear elastic to your shoulder seams and your bodice seams to keep them from getting stretched out or looking a little wavy. Pages 15 and 16 give an entire list of what pages you need to print based on the options and sizes you have selected. Page 17 then contains the cut charts for the rectangular pieces, which in this case would be the back ties, skirt pieces, tiers, and the bodice pleated panel. The fabric that I will be using for the purpose of this sew along is this Rainbow Stripes by Raspberry Creek Fabrics. It just recently came out a few weeks ago and I just could not pass it up. So I'm really excited to sew up Goldenrod with it. If you are using the projector file, then you can just hang tight for a second and just listen as I talk to those who will be using the pattern pieces. So I have right here is page 50 and 53, and I have already cut out my pattern pieces, but I wanted to show you all how to assemble your pattern pieces properly. So as you can see on page 50 here, there are one full circle and 2 half circles on the pattern page, and a rectangle that goes around the perimeter of your page. Page 53 and all the other pages in the pattern have the same thing. Most pages will have full circles in the corners, but these are half circles since they're on the edges. So what you're going to want to do is find the correlating letters inside the circle and match them up. So here is G, G, and then on this side is H and H. So we know that these 2 pages are going to go one on top of each other. And you are going to use these circles to line up your pattern pages, as well as those rectangle lines that go around the perimeter. Once you have lined your pattern pages up to the best of your ability, you will either tape them or use a glue stick to adhere them together. Once you have your pattern pieces assembled, then you will cut out the sizes that you need. It is also really important to measure your test square found at the very first page of the pattern pieces to make sure that it measures 1 inch. If it is off even by a little bit, the entire pattern pieces will be off, which means that the garment will not fit correctly at the end. So it's very important that you measure that out, and that should be done before you start assembling. So once you have cut your pattern pieces out, they will look like this. So this is the back bodice and the front bodice. They look very similar, pretty much just the necklines are what's different. And for this tutorial, I will be using the short sleeve. For this tutorial, I will be doing the pleated bodice version. For the pleated bodice version, you are going to want a bodice front lining and then a pleated bodice panel from the cut chart. So it's just a long rectangle, and we will take care of that and make it look more like a bodice on day 2. If you are creating the simple bodice, then you'll have 1 main front bodice and then 1 lining front bodice. For all versions, you will want 2 back bodices. You will want 2 sleeves, whether that's long or short. And then for the skirts, if you are doing the simple version, you will want 2 skirt pieces. If you are doing the tiered version, then you will need 6 skirt pieces. Also, do not forget to cut the knit interfacing in the cut chart for the pleated bodice version. Also, if you are doing the back ties, you will want to cut your back ties as well. And that completes day 1 of the Sunflower Seams Goldenrod Sew Along. Be sure to join us tomorrow for day 2 as we assemble our pleated and simple bodices.